just to give you guys a little bit of information, welcome to the podcast, Don't Talk Politics at the Dinner Table, which we are refusing to do. We are going to talk politics here at the dinner table. It's going to be a blast. I've got my friend Nate Murphy, and I got Joel Chapman. They both have differing opinions on our topic for tonight, which is white privilege. How this is going to go and how we plan on setting it up is each individual will get their time to go ahead and present their case without any interruptions whatsoever, including myself. We just want to listen to the other individual as much as we possibly can. That is what this forum is for, so that we can come to a common ground at the end of everything. All right, eventually what's going to happen is we'll come after we talk, we'll go ahead and meet, and we'll start conversing back and forth. That's when you guys, the watchers on live, will have the opportunity to go ahead and PQ the interest of some great conversation, add some questions, throw them out there on live for either one of my guests or myself. We'll answer them as much as we can, and then we'll eat while we're doing this, and we'll end the podcast. So it'll be really, real simple. We actually even went a little bit further and have a little itinerary, so it's going to keep us on track a little bit here. Again, my name is John. This is my podcast, so if you ever get a chance, I'll go ahead and keep the link down there. The podcast will be up tonight. Visit the podcast on Anchor. This is Nate. Nate, you also have a podcast, correct?
I do. It's called The Fan Cave. It's also on Anchor. It's just short 30-minute episodes or so about some sports. Usually my opinions, but I'd love to get some feedback. So anyone out there watching needs a sports podcast to listen to, go ahead and find me, hit me up.
He's also a Boston guy, so make sure you give him a lot of crap about Boston stuff too. As well, Joel's got a lot. If you follow Joe at all, he's got, I can't even keep track of it. The guy's got so much going on. I think he's got a podcast, he's got art, he's got photography, he's got his MMA, he's got a business, I can't even list it all, but you've got quite a bit, right?
Thank you. Yeah, I got a lot going on. The Chapman show, I kind of do everything under one umbrella because I'm an entertainer. I just love to entertain people. I do podcasts with a lot of MMA fighters, or just professional fighters, boxers, period. I do bare knuckle. I even interview people from the UFC. I do a lot of artwork for bigger name people, and I love doing photography. And yeah, so I do definitely have a lot going on. And I post crazy stuff all the time.
Oh, it's a blast. We have such a good time in the comment section.
Yeah, whatever comes to my mind, I post. And I just watch and kind of interact with people and see what they think and kind of pick their brain. So this is perfect.
This is a perfect opportunity for us. Let me keep going down here on the itinerary right here. Again, I told you guys the purpose of the podcast. Again, it's not to change either individual's mind. It's not try to convince one person or the other that they're right or they're wrong, but it's really to come to an eventual conclusion, a middle ground that says, hey, look, this is where we can agree on this topic, because in essence, we need to be able to progress forward in society as a whole, and particularly in American politics today. And we can't do that if we just allow the small minority on either side to scream louder than everybody else. And I feel that we're missing that middle ground where people just want to talk, have conversations, and say, look, we don't agree on everything, but we can agree on some things, and we can be civil about it. And that's kind of the purpose of this podcast. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So, introduction to the topic. White privilege. It's been a huge thing in the last couple of years. I know that it started really in the middle to late 80s with a book that came out about white privilege and so on and so forth. And it came to the forefront of colleges and some universities and so on and so forth. So it's kind of been a big divide in today's political climate. With everything that's going on with Black Lives Matter, and we're not going to get in with Black Lives Matter and Antifa and the Proud Boys, but it's a whole, I promise you we'll get to that discussion sometime later on in another podcast. That'll be coming, I promise you. But with everything that's out there in the climate and these things, I think white privilege is one that I thought was a very interesting one. Myself being Mexican by legality, but look very much white. So yes, I am Mexican. A lot of people go, "You're not Mexican." And I go, "Yeah, I really am." If you see me in the summertime, I get really dark. My sister, she looks very Mexican. My brother looks Mexican. I'm not so lucky. I'm the white Mexican. I don't even know what they call them. But anyways, either way, it's neither here or there. I thought the diversity was really, really great. I've got Joel, who's obviously an African American, and I got Nate, who I'm going to presume is white.
You got it.
With some there, so I hope I'm accurate on that. I'm glad that And they're interesting enough going to be arguing or at least commenting about their sides. Nate actually believes white privilege is a thing that exists and we need to be cognitive of it and we have to be aware of it and there's some things that we can do to change it. Whereas Joel doesn't believe it exists, believes it's really more of a mindset of individuals and so on and so forth. So I think this is a very good dynamic. I think it's interesting enough that we have the opposite racial sides believing on that thing. I think it's really, really cool. It's unique and it's diverse, and I think bringing those perspectives to the table be really good. Before we go for it, how is it good?
It's delicious, John.
Is it good? Tell her, it's good.
Yeah, wonderful,
all right,
guys.
See,
really good.
See,
really good.
There we go. So if you want to be a guest on the podcast, I do make dinner. Again, that's why we call it Don't Talk Politics at the Dinner Table. I make dinner, and it's good food. You have good fun and meet cool new people, and hopefully come to a common ground, and then help the conversation continue and progress forward. So, moving along, we want to talk about the rules for the discussion. There's no interruptions. So each member is going to each guest is going to get 10 minutes to kind of talk about how they feel about their individual side. Right? They'll talk about how they feel, present any facts, what their feelings are, with no interruptions. If the guest feels like they need to ask for questions, we're there to interject if they want it. But other than that, it's your platform, it's your show. You do what you want with it. And then after 10 minutes, we'll go ahead and we'll do a little interjection there. We'll do an intermission and switch it over to the other one. So I think I've got Nate going first in this one. So we'll really sit down, listen to what you have to say. And really take that in, listen to what he's got to say, and then we'll do a little switcheroo and go over here to you, and we'll let you talk, and then we'll take some questions from you guys, and then we'll kind of try and piecemeal what we can come together with a common ground. And that's what I'm hoping we can find there. So those are really the only rules for the discussion. That and that you enjoy the meal. That's the biggest thing. The meal in the company, I think, is the biggest thing. So, and I've got plenty more. So if you're hungry, that's all for you guys. Eat it up. I'm gonna eat it. And if you guys don't eat anymore, I'm going to end up eating the rest of that. And it's good for me and it's bad for me. I don't need to eat any more pasta, but it's good stuff. So with that, Nate, I'm just going to introduce you a little bit here. You give them a little bit about you, who you are, where you're from. Doesn't have to be very long. And then the floor is yours, baby.
All right, like you said, I'm Nate Murphy. I work at JBS with Joel, actually, so we actually know each other, which makes this a little bit easier to do. I grew up in a small town. I live out in Kalamazoo now. So Kalamazoo and the small town West Virginia where I grew up are completely different. And maybe that's sort of skewed my view of this topic, a little bit in the direction that I sit. And I didn't come loaded with facts or anything. This is all very, opinionated. So, again, white privilege to me, I think there's kind of a common misconception, especially inside the white community. We take, a lot of offense to hearing someone say that we're privileged because of our skin color. But I don't think it necessarily means that we were just handed everything. Like I've never accused anybody of not having to work for what they've gotten. And I posted about this on my Facebook page, which is actually how I wound up here. And got some good comments out of it from friends and family from back home. And actually I had one of my white friends asked me if we were supposed to apologize for being white. And that kind of struck me because I don't want it to sound like I think that anybody needs to apologize for who they are, white, black, Mexican, Asian. You are who you are and you can't help that. But I feel like just in the privilege, being white has kind of taken down that first barrier to anything that I've wanted to have to do. Like, if I apply for a job or a house or whatever, there's always that question on there, white, black, it asks for your nationality, and if there was no privilege and they really weren't using that for anything, why is it there? I don't think that's something that needs to be on there if it's not meant to be used for anything. And if they truly don't care if you're white, black, Asian, Mexican, they don't need it. And so I feel like just having that sort of a question on anything, it already takes down that first barrier when I check I'm Caucasian. You know, I don't think that automatically means that I'm going to get anything over the next guy, but that's one step in the right direction. If I don't get a job, it's probably because I don't have that skill set or the education or the time in that field to move up and get that job. But I feel like I can probably go out and get it. If I need to go get more experience, I feel like I have, and I keep saying that one barrier is out of my way. And maybe I'm wrong, and again, maybe it's because of where I grew up, and it was just white people where I grew up. It was a very small town, and again, my views might be a little skewed, but that's kind of where I sit on the whole thing. Is mostly, we don't have to fight that one extra battle, and it shouldn't be fought by anybody, and if that racist thing still exists, then at some point you have to say, at least in my opinion, you have to say that there is some sort of white privilege. If somebody hiring for a job, and I keep going back to the same things, and I know that, but someone's hiring for a job, if they've got any kind of racist bone in their body, they're not gonna pick the non-white person. And to me, that's a privilege, and it's not one that I want if it's because of that, but it moves that barrier out of my way, and it gives me one leg up on somebody who's worked just as hard. And I'll never take away, anybody's work ethic, or, if I know they're working just as hard and someone's more qualified, if being white is what earns me whatever we're going after over the next person, then in all honesty, I don't want it, because that's not the way I was raised, and that's not the way, it's not the way the world should work.
Now you mentioned where you were born and raised in West Virginia. That had a lot of play in the way that you think now. In what ways did that help affect or mold your thinking into what you believe now?
And honestly, it was just because we were small town West Virginia. It was just white folks, and I'm not gonna come out here and say that we were all, racist and all that, because we weren't. That wasn't our mentality. But when I moved out of there and I started seeing different cultures and different things, it was kind of a culture shock to me. And I think then when you start to get to know these people, and then you hear all these other stories that, it kind of makes you think, well, I never had to deal with that. And maybe I only never had to deal with that because there was only one group of people in this town or in the schools I went to. But when you start to hear about how skin color has affected somebody else, then you kind of start to think, well, maybe I am a little bit more privileged than I thought I was. And if I'm privileged in any way, I don't want it to be because the color of my skin dictates that privilege.
Now, have you ever had an instance in your life where you can look back and say, yes, I attained that because I am white?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I couldn't think of anything off the top of my head. I mean, I've worked hard to get everywhere, and again, I don't think because I'm white I've ever been handed anything, or being white hasn't gotten everybody handed everything. But so I don't think there's been that in my life, and nobody that I know of directly. But when you talk to other people of different races, and you kind of hear, well, maybe I didn't get that because, and it's hard to prove sometimes.
Sure.
So when it's just someone say, well, I'm black or I'm Asian, and I think that kind of held me back. That kind of makes you think, is there something that happened to me that gave me that because I'm white? And like I said, I don't think of anything off the top of my head that's happened to me, but I certainly hope it hasn't.
Now, so systemically, you believe that obviously there is some privileges to being white. I guess the next question for you would be, if this is true, and you believe that it is, what is it that we can do as individuals, as a society, to rid it? What can we do to get rid of that privilege that is white?
Well, and I kind of mentioned it before. I think the first step is, when you're filling out a job application or housing applications or whatever the case may be, we don't need that leading question is, what's your race, what's your nationality? If that truly means nothing in today's society, that question can go away. And I think when we start taking things like that away, and we don't, because we classify a lot as, we have Black History Month and we have Asian American History Month. When we can start just saying, well, why do we need that? Why can't we teach history? Why does it have to be segregated in these different facets? Then I think we can start seeing that racism and that white privilege. Because to me, I think they kind of go hand in hand. If you have racism, someone sees there being a privilege in your skin color. So I think things like that can start minimizing privilege and racism and that kind of thing.
All right, cool. Well, I think all very good, valid points. I honestly, you made some great points, and I think there's going to be some. I see it loaded up with comments right now. So people are asking questions, and that's exactly what we want. We want to get that perspective as to why you think it is and what we can do to solve it, if it exists. That being said, on the opposite spectrum is Joel. Joel doesn't believe that it exists. He believes that I'm gonna paraphrase him. He believes that it's just hard work and ethic, regardless of your skin color, gets you to where you get. That privilege doesn't exist for any skin color. It just depends on how hard you work. So, with that, thank you very much for being kind and listening. I appreciate it, and letting this gentleman talk. And
thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And sir, you have the floor.
Well, I do definitely think that you had really good points. But why I personally don't think that white privilege exists is because there's not really, especially right now in this day and age, there is no privilege to be white. I hear people, for example, I'm a very educated person. People say I talk white and they make it sound like it's a bad or derogatory thing, which I don't even understand. But there are no, for example, there are no good, all black colleges. You have all black colleges. Are there all white colleges?
No.
Okay. You have black scholarships. Do you have white scholarships?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
You have black grants. Do you have white grants?
No.
Exactly. Whereas there's literally no privilege to being white. If anything, people are very upset what happened to our ancestors. I get it. I really do. I get it. Maybe about 50, 60 years ago, I will say that there was white privilege. No doubt about it. But I'm black. I'm happy to be black. I love being black. I feel like there's so much more opportunity for you as a black man than it actually is as a white man now. For example, and it's all about what you're qualified for. For example, I got a very good job in a lab. A lot of white people I know apply for that job. I was actually speaking to a white lady today. She was just like, I applied for that job and I didn't get it. I did, because I was qualified for it, I feel like people who say, oh, I didn't get that because of my skin color, this people say that all the time. I feel like it's a cop-out because they're angry because they didn't get something that they wanted, so it's an easy cop-out to say, oh, I didn't get this because of my skin color. And I guess, I don't know, I don't see any privilege to being white. I really don't. And if I feel like if there was a white privilege, for example, there would be no poor white people. There wouldn't be. Sometimes I'm riding my motorcycle and I have a convertible because I work very hard for those vehicles. And sometimes I just see some white homeless guy on the corner. He doesn't have any privilege at all. He made bad life decisions and that put him in a situation to where he was. So I just don't see why people say that there's white privilege. I feel like it's green privilege, if anything. For example, I'm just going to use LeBron James just because he's such a rich person, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Okay, say LeBron James gets a DUI, for example. Everybody would know about it. he would be able to pay that off easily and it wouldn't be a big deal. Now say a poor white person got a DUI, they'd probably throw the book at that person. It just depends on variables and situations. And I feel like people, they put variables in the situation. They have one variable and they just blow it up to the whole race. And I feel like that's what the media does. I feel like there's no privilege to being white. If anything, these days, it's privileges to being black, which I love and I'm going to take advantage of. So I don't get it. I don't get why people say that. I feel like a lot of times, and people say that black people can't be racist. I'm from a black family. Like a lot of my friends are black. A lot of times people talk really bad about white people, and they do it as a way to make people feel guilty about who they are, or because they didn't succeed in something. I think what made me be accountable for my actions is I do a sport, MMA, and it doesn't matter what color you are when you step in the cage with somebody. And when you lose, you have to be accountable for your actions. And like, there is no excuses. I can't be like, oh, he beat me up because he was white. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if he's white, black, Mexican, whatever. So with that being said, I just don't see, if I seen a privilege to being white, if people got X amount of money, or if they for sure got jobs, or they were for sure given something because they were white, I'll be like, yeah, there was white privilege. Back in the day, there was white privilege. I just don't think that there is now.
Now, you talk about, you made a good point about money, almost a classism issue.
Yes.
LeBron James being your thing. So you think there's more issues with, if you're rich, you've got it made. It doesn't matter what color you are.
Period. And everybody has ghettos, and everybody's poor. Every race is poor. For example, people think that the word ghetto was from black people. It wasn't. It was actually used like back in Germany. The Jewish people. It was like poor people. White. You have like poor black people are literally in the ghetto, and then you have poor white people who are like in trailers and stuff. They struggling just like anybody else. I just don't see. I see if, like, say you walk into a store and they're like, oh man, you're white, let me give you this. That just doesn't happen. So I can't think of any privilege. I can't think of one privilege it is to actually be white. Really. I can name multiple privileges to being black. Like I said, scholarships. The government, they love us. They love us. So we actually do have privilege, and a lot of people, they don't take advantage of the privileges, and they might not like a certain race, so they just try to make them feel guilty. I think that's what it is. Usually black people who say it's white privilege are people who don't like white people. That's what I usually see. And I'm being real.
Sure,
I can keep it real.
Yep.
I grew up around black people. I'm always around black people. I love my people, but I'm just keeping it real. And that's just my opinion from what I've seen and from what I've heard. Because behind closed doors, those same people who say it's white privilege say horrible things about white people, and I'm just keeping it real. And I can say that because I hear them say stuff behind closed doors, and then they just try to be slick publicly.
So that's interesting perspective, especially for someone who's grown up in the black community. Obviously, being black, you see it from a completely different perspective, and you have a completely different perspective. Now, I don't want to get too much off topic because, again, this is just about white privilege, and this isn't about the plethora of other things that could come out of here, racism and Black Lives Matter and classes and all these other things that could come out of here, right? But a question for you would be, why is it that black people, not just black people, but obviously white people, why do you feel they believe white privilege exists? And I know you touched on it a little bit, saying you believe they generally don't like white people, and they're absolving themselves of their guilt, right?
Yeah, I think, and I can't speak for everybody, but a lot of white people, they just don't want to be. They just feel like they don't want to be considered racist. Like, that makes them nervous. I know you're not racist. I know you're not racist.
But it's a real thing. It really is.
It's a real thing. And people, they feel guilty. They feel nervous. They don't want to be called racist. So they will say stuff like that so they won't be considered racist, so they can fit into like an agenda with everybody else. And that's what I noticed. I noticed it's a lot of offensive racism going on in a weird way.
What do you mean by that?
But what I mean by offensive racism is people will do things to be considered not racist.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yep.
So they will do whatever they can to not be considered racist. So they'd be like, yeah, I have white privilege, because they're scared to be called a racist by another black person or another person of color, in my opinion.
Okay.
So I think it's a nervous thing, and I get it. I couldn't imagine being white and getting in an argument with somebody black and them just being like, you racist, and you feel horrible. You would feel horrible. So, but if I get in an argument with a black person, I can say whatever I want to them, and it won't matter. They can't call me racist.
Sure.
I've been called a coon before. They called me a coon or a house in or whatever. But I mean, I get it. I would feel nervous too. So I feel like it's a guilt trip. I feel like it's a guilt trip, and I feel like it's a good guilt trip. I mean, it works because people get scared. Nobody wants to be called racist.
Nobody wants to.
Nobody wants to be called
Nobody
racist.
does. That's for damn sure.
So that's why I think that people say white privilege. Seriously, if I felt that there was an advantage to being white, I would just be like, yeah, there's white privilege. Now back in the day, for sure, yes. And and like the last thing I'm gonna touch on is, for example, MPI. When I first started at MPI, there was no black people there hardly, and they had me fill out that census, and it like literally places they have to have a certain amount of black people, a certain amount of Mexican people, otherwise it makes them look bad. So I was not qualified for the job at MPI, and I got the job just because I was black. Like, there was so many more white people qualified than me, but they had to meet that quota back in the day. They had to. So they hired me because I was black, and I got an opportunity because I was black, because the company was nervous. They pretty much, they didn't tell me that, but they pretty much kind of told me that.
Okay.
So sometimes it can actually work in a good way. Like, it's really weird how that worked out. And I worked in that changed my life, you know? And now if I was white, I wouldn't have got that job. There was no way I would have got that job, because they needed that to fill that black quota. So in a way, it can work to your advantage. It's really weird, but it's worked to my advantage, and it really has.
So you've had some advantages because you are black.
Yes.
You admit that freely.
Yeah.
And rightfully so, as any human, I think, if you found the advantage, you would use that, right, to your advantage.
Yeah.
I mean, it's there for you. Why not take it, right? That's the human nature. In retrospect, thinking of that, if coming back to Nate, if there truly is a white privilege, like you believe there is, would you want to? And I know you said you don't want to use it, but would you use it to help you in your family situation or your particular situation too, or is it something you feel that there's nothing you can do? It's just inherently there.
I mean, it's human nature, like you said. If there's an advantage to be had, and I've got a family to take care of, so yeah, if there's an advantage to be had, you'd be stupid not to use it. But then back to Joel's point, then you'd be labeled racist, right? Like, right. You've got white privilege. You've just said, yeah, you'd use it to take advantage of a situation. So now it comes off as, well, you would do whatever you could do to get ahead of a black guy or whatever. So it becomes and I know you said we don't want to get too far off topic, but that's why I think those two ties so symmetrically together, because it's one follows the other everywhere it goes, and so. Again, what was the second? I'm sorry. What was the second half of your question there?
No,
because I don't want to take advantage of it because I'm white, and like you said, and I do, but I think it is sort of inherently there. No one's just gonna hand it, And he said he was kind of given a job because he was black, but I think, and in his case, it worked out for him. But in other cases, I think you kind of have, if you're white, they're just gonna. Okay, well, yeah, we're not worried about that black quota right now. We've got a black guy applying. We've got a white guy applying. So if there is white privilege, then that's, I think, kind of where would come into play. And again, I don't want to be labeled as something I'm not by saying I would take advantage of something like that.
Nobody ever does.
But
right?
again, if it's there, and this is one of those catch-22s. You can't say, well, you're going against human nature, saying you wouldn't take it, but then if you take it, you're racist, and it's a really tough spot to be in. So I don't think I would intentionally put myself ahead of somebody just because of the color of my skin. But if I was given an opportunity like Joel was, then I would be crazy not to take that opportunity. If I'm looking to better myself and my situation and my family's situation, and again, would I knowingly do it? I don't know. I can't say I would. I can't say I wouldn't, to be 100% honest. But if something gave me a chance to fulfill a dream or better my situation, I would be crazy kind of not to take it.
So, I've got a couple people here commenting and stuff. Just to reiterate to you guys, while we're live here, we want to take questions so if you guys have questions, you're listening to the discussion, and you want to, chime in and say, hey, what about this or this particular situation? How do you feel about this? Feel free. We're watching over the comments as they come in. So we'll go ahead and ask those questions to the appropriate guests as need be. So feel free to just load that feed up with questions. These guys are obviously more than willing to do that. So, and it's a good conversation right now. I think we've had good. So now I think what I want to do is I want to kind of bridge the two different, sides, views, and visions that we have, and I want to bridge that together and kind of find where we can agree on some things without necessarily changing your views on things. And I know you talked about taking advantage of things that, if you're white and you take advantage of it, be considered racist. But if you're black and you take advantage of it, you're a smart man.
Pretty much.
Right? And
yeah.
And so there's that on there. There's also and I didn't ask you this, so this would be interesting. I know we talked, or at least Joel talked a little bit about classism and about how money gets you what you want, irregardless of race. Maybe that's something you can touch on a little bit. And
I don't disagree. Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. And we bring up athletes a lot in that conversation. In fact, that was brought up on my Facebook post as well. With there's all these black athletes, and that would be a black privilege. But again, they had to work to get that, right? So I'm not going to take away anybody's drive and work ethic. It doesn't matter white, black, whatever the case may be, whatever the sport is, basketball, football, hockey, and there's one where there's no black privilege. There's maybe a handful of black hockey players. Does that mean there's white privilege in that sport? I don't know. There's just more, white Canadians. We don't like cold. And again, that's a stereotype and a whole nother podcast. But yeah, they work their asses off to get that, and so they earn their money the hard way. And so I'm not going to take that away from anybody. But yeah, that money means everything, and like he touched on it. It doesn't matter if you're white or black. If you're rich, you've got a little bit more power than the white guy or the black guy that's down at the bottom of the totem pole. I don't think there's much debate about that at all. Money is power in today's America.
So I have a question from Brianna. She's one of my. We work together. She's a fantastic worker for me in Three Rivers. She still works down there. Probably one of the hardest workers that I know. Her and her girlfriend are phenomenal people. Love them to death. So Brianna, get up here sometime soon because I haven't seen your face in like 2 years, and I have tequila that needs to be drank. So please get up here. But I do have a question for her. She states, we have lists for you, Joel. Okay. We have laws for a diverse quota because it exists. Not being qualified and getting a job is a management problem. How many women and people of color applied and were qualified when all the white people who are there were qualified than all the other white people who were there, I guess?
Okay, and this is where I'm gonna go. And that was a long time ago. That was like early 2000s when that happened. But I feel like every situation has different variables. Like for example, I work at JBS. We have all types of black, Mexican, Burmese, African supervisors. You know what I mean? And I see a lot of normal white people apply for those same jobs, and they don't get them. And you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Absolutely, yeah.
They don't get them. It just literally depends on where you are. For example, I talked about all black colleges. We have all black colleges. Now, where is that white person's privilege? Could they go to an all black college and apply there? No, they probably wouldn't even get hired there. You know what I mean? It just depends on everything has variables, and every situation has variables. I guarantee if Nate applied to an all black college, I guarantee he would not get hired. And if he did get hired, he would never ever be able to move up. So every situation just has different variables. So some black people, they might apply for a job, like I said, at an all white place. They might not get it. Were they qualified? I don't know. It just depends. It's hard to say that anything is set in stone with any race because there's so many variables. And I feel like people, when they don't accomplish something, they blame it on their race. That's how I feel about it. You know what I mean? It just depends on how qualified you are, I feel, or kind of what you're going for. It's not, nothing is black and white. And I feel that people that say that there's white privilege, they try to make it a black and white situation, and it's really not. I mean, I just brought a very valid point up for all black college, and that's legit. And I don't think that's something that anybody could argue.
Now, some people would argue that the reason why there is all black colleges or diverse laws that help people of color get jobs in front of other people, get in front of different raises and promotions or colleges and things like that, is because the lack of diversity in the past. And to make up for that now in the future, we have to promote that diversity almost as a pendulum swing, right? So it was over here in white territory forever, right? And then we realized that we were wrong, and so to correct those ways, we've swung it this way. But is that right? Is that wrong? Does that help? I guess that's the question, because I guess the question is, does it become, and I know everybody has different opinions on the words reverse racism, and that again is going to be another topic. I promise you, that's going to be another podcast. But when it swings one way and then swings the other, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, right? So I guess I'll get both your guys' thoughts on that.
Okay, with that, I will say in a way it helps, because what most people don't understand is we are only 13% of the population. It's not a whole lot of black. I mean, it's a lot of black people in the United States,
sure,
but we only make up 13% of the population. So, and it's a lot of problems in our communities. In the hoods, we got like impoverished, we got crime. I mean, we killing each other like hotcakes. That's a whole different conversation. But our community definitely could use the help because of what's going on in our own community. So that has nothing to do with white people. And people can point fingers all they want to. I mean, I've had countless friends get killed, and they were killed by other black people, which sucks. You know what I mean? But that's the reality of it. So we do need that little help to kind of get ahead, I feel. And I don't feel like it's necessarily reverse racism. I feel like it's just kind of a problem that's going on in our community that we do legit need help. And I don't feel like it's reverse racism or racism either way. I mean, it's a lot of problems in the black community. But to say that white people are just the problem, that's not true. It's so many different variables to like what's going on just in our community, and just period overall. It's not that simple, and it's not that black and white. And I feel like it starts with us, and that's kind of the issue. I mean, people are pointing fingers at the white race when we got a lot of our own problems, I feel, and it kind of leaks over into that.
And what do you think about?
I mean, you're right. It was over here in the white area, and then you're right. It does have to swing. I think we did need to do something to get that diversity, but at some point we need to pull it back to the middle, because there does have to be somewhere down the line, and hopefully soon, where it doesn't matter, what your race is. If you're qualified for a job, you're qualified for a job. If you've worked your ass off to get a job, or whatever the case may be, that what you did to earn it is what got it for you, not the color of your skin, not where you grew up. To get that diversity started, yes, there did have to be a major swing, and we did have to see some of that.
So you guys are both agreeing on that?
To an extent,
right? It's got to be that swing that kind of adjusts for the past of how it was so far this way. And the argument could be, obviously, and we won't talk about it now, but the argument could be it still is there. But
I feel like it's evening out.
It's evening out.
I mean, from what I can see, I feel like it's evening out. I know so many. If I didn't know a lot of successful black people, I would say it's not. But I know a lot of successful black people, and they just aren't professional athletes. I got a lot of friends that are lawyers, realtors, doctors. I mean, they work their ass off to get there. So I feel like it's your work ethic. And if it wasn't, then I wouldn't see so many of my black friends be successful. That's how I feel about it. I feel like it's evening out. I mean, it depends on your grind. It doesn't matter what color you are. It's your grind. It's how much you want it. Period. Point blank.
I completely agree. And in Joel's situation where he was kind of, like you said, given the job because he was black, at that time we needed things like that, and giving people an opportunity is what it was about. And then as those opportunities start to even out, right, then we can start looking at it as, well, this person did this to earn this, and we don't have to say, well, he's black or he's white or he's whatever, so let him have the job. It's got to be that grind that gets people where they want to be, and I believe that 100%, no matter who you are.
I agree.
So I think we have a good commonality there, right?
Yeah.
So we talked about that pendulum swing. We talked about the need for it to be able to head and kind of reverse the course that we were in, the direction we were in, and then to let it come back and stabilize so that we can say, look, it's not black or white, it's the best person forward, whoever works their ass off, and it isn't a color thing. And I think there's some small things that you talked about, getting rid of race on any kind of application, I think is key. If it really truly isn't an issue, get rid of it.
Yeah, why you even have it there?
Yeah, I mean, for housing, for college, for jobs, it's on everything, right?
Yep.
What is your race? What is your nationality? And it shouldn't be there. Go ahead, Joe.
Okay, I will say this, and I just think it's weird. I'm not complaining, but for example, a black student, say our grades aren't the best, and real athletic, might be maybe a basketball player, a track star, something like that. I was a track star. Okay, say you all stayed track or something, and you try, your grades aren't that good, and you're trying to get into college. Now, if that white kid had pretty much perfect grades, and you have a black kid that's an athlete, that's grades aren't even that good, I guarantee you they will take the black kid in that college. I guarantee you they would, in a heartbeat. I see it happens so much. So in a way, white people almost have to work harder to get ahead sometimes. No joke, no joke. And I read about it a while ago, there's discrepancies in scores to get in colleges for stuff like that. So I just don't see the privilege. I just kind of want to let that be known, and nobody can argue that. I mean, you see it happen all the time. It happens a lot. It really does. It's legit.
To kind of touch on, you've got it. I won't argue your point. That black athlete, he's gonna get into that school based on his athletics and not necessarily his academics. That white kid's not gonna miss out though. The other shoe is though he's gonna have to pay for it. Right, he's gonna have to get scholarships another way, which there aren't as many academic scholarships. There aren't as many, to help out the smart kids as opposed to the athletic kids. But I don't think it just works, in the black athlete's favor. If there's a white athlete out there, and granted, it is a smaller population of high-end, talented white athletes. People
like me, right?
Yeah.
The athletic specimen that I am today.
And as I sit here before you as well, but that white athlete is going to have the same privilege as that black athlete as far as that scholarship goes. But again, there could be a black student in high school who no one ever talks about the really smart black guy, who grinds and gets his way, from the bottom based on his brains, right? He can go to school too, and again, now here you're talking about money, assuming he can find scholarship or the money to attend that university. So I think in that situation, the pendulum again swinging in both directions.
But I will say this though, the difference is, and this is a big difference. Say that black kid has really good grades, I guarantee you he will be able to get grants because he is black. And that white person would not be able to get grants because he is white. I guarantee it. So I just don't see the privilege in that. But I do get what you're saying. With the athlete thing, you are 100% correct. But for example, I'm getting ready to start another business and they have literal black business loans, stuff like that, black grants, and I'm getting ready to capitalize on that. So I mean, I'm seeing it, I'm living it firsthand, I'm living it. I'm literally living proof of that. But I do get what you're saying though. But I just had to throw that out there because like we definitely get a lot more help from the government. Maybe because they feel guilty about what happened a couple hundred years ago, I get it. But like we're in now. And but the point is I literally don't see any privilege to being white. With that being said. There is privileges to being black, and most black people don't see it like that, but I'm just keeping it real. I mean, you need to capitalize on that stuff. Capitalize on it. Okay.
So, no, you're good. And I think what we're learning here, other than obviously the whole white privilege thing, is that people can come together and sit down and have a civil discussion and really kind of dig into different people's backgrounds and the reason why they grew up and the way they think, and I think that's so important, and it's missing today. It's missing to sit down and actually have these conversations and be okay with that, and that's why I do what I do, because I love first I love cooking. I enjoy it. My weight tells me I enjoy it very much, so I enjoy doing it.
I love eating. I hope I get to come back sometime.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm full though.
Brianna brings up you bring up a good point about voting laws. She talks about the South and how the South wanted to change some of their voting laws to make it harder for minorities to vote. And it had to go through the Supreme Court to do that. After Obama was elected, the Supreme Court ruled that obviously passed a racial thing because they have a black president. And after the law was pulled, keeping the South locked down, they started taking voting rights away and making it harder to vote, so that millions are left out every year. Her point being is that they still need these laws, or would go right back to the way it was. We'll go right back to that pendulum swing.
Can you tell me like what law specifically?
I don't have any of that information. Brianna, if you're still watching, any specific laws specifically you can do. I know that in the South, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I know particularly in Georgia, I think is the issue. So they condensed voting polling stations to 1 per 5 counties or something, and it always happened to be in not rural locations, but locations of prominent minorities. So, for instance, downtown Atlanta, where there was a ton of people, there's 1 polling station, but the majority of people in that polling station are black, and so now you're going to have to wait hours upon hours upon hours to vote tens of thousands of people into one spot because the laws allow that to do that. Now, the question becomes, I guess, and again, I want her on this show. She was originally supposed to sit in this seat, and I know that she's had other issues too going on. So you were gonna have to come here. I've got a ton, so I can't wait for you to come here, because voting laws is another thing. The question becomes, are they doing it? And then I don't want to get into it now, but just to put it out there, are they doing it for purposes of suppressing the vote? Or are they doing it for other reasons that we're unaware of? Obviously, Brianna would say that they're doing it to suppress the vote and make it harder for minorities to have access to vote, and thus preventing him. But that's, of course, assuming that minorities are voting Democrat versus Republican, if that's what we're looking at, and so on and so forth. So,
okay. I watched a video, and I have to bring this up. I watched a video, it was a while ago, and they asked, and I'm not a Democrat, I'm not a Republican, I'm just throwing this out there. But they asked like white liberal people what they thought about black people voting. And a lot of them, they were saying, they were like, I know it's probably hard for black people to vote. A lot of them don't have licenses. A lot of them don't have cars. And like they were saying all this stuff. And then later on, they asked black people. They were like, "Do you have a license?" They were like, "Yeah, of course I got a license." They were like, "Yeah, of course I got a car. Of course I can get around. Of course I can do this. Of course I can do that." To me, like, I found that so offensive. Like, I mean, I know they didn't mean to be offensive, but that just sounds offensive. They looked at black people like we like animals or dogs, or we can't do this, or we can't do that, or we can't accomplish this. And they looked at us like we kind of like, they look at us like we like the handicapped kids of the races, of like all the different races. And I don't like that. And I feel like that's one of those type of things. If people want to vote, they're gonna vote. I mean, if that place is full, they can take a bus and go somewhere else. That has nothing to do with white privilege at all. I feel like if people, like, if I want to vote, I'll wait a couple hours to vote. You know what I mean? I will. If it's packed, it might be packed wherever I go. So I don't think that that's a white privilege thing with voting. It's just what's kind of going on in that area. And I don't think that they're necessarily trying to suppress someone's vote. It's just, do those people even want to vote? Do those people want to? If I really want to vote, I'll stand in line. If I feel really serious about something, I'll stand in line for a couple hours, wouldn't you?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, so I just think that's an excuse.
We do it on Black Friday every year, right? We stand in line for
guy.
hours. Well, I don't either. Amazon deals. That's where we hit up.
Right.
But to that point, if there's something you want to do, or something you're after, right? We'll stand in the line. I've camped out at sporting events because I wanted to be one of the first people in the building, right? And I was a stupid college kid at the time, but I did it. So if there's something we want, again, it's human nature. If we want it, we will go get it. And it doesn't. I don't like, to your point. It doesn't matter what you throw out there. If it's important enough, we'll find a way.
Exactly. That doesn't suppress the vote. If people want to vote, they will vote. That's what I'm saying.
So she does bring up another. I love see it. She's on. I love it. She says, she brings up an example. She goes, I can and have yelled directly at police, while my friend who is black gets pulled over and has to explain why they're even driving over on this street with me in the car, but them driving. Why does my friend have to teach her children or teenagers not to act like a foolish teenager and how to get pulled over and how not to get pulled over? And I don't know a single white family that has to teach their child how to not get pulled over.
Okay. Now I'm going to go into this. I'm gonna tell a story. Now, I used to live in Chicago. And there was a whole bunch of me and my black friends, and there was this white girl Amber with us. I will never forget this. Now, the police ended up getting called. Something crazy ended up happening, and she was really drunk, and she talked super crazy to the cops. And she swung on one of them, and you know what? She got her ass kicked. They beat the shit out of her. They beat her up. We were all black. They didn't do anything to us. And I'm going to go on statistics. And most people, they don't really know the statistics. More white people get killed by the police than black people. By far. It doesn't matter what color you are. If you do something to a cop, or if a cop feels threatened, he wants to go home more than he wants you to go home, or you know what I mean? Like, if his life is put in jeopardy, you know, it is what it is. I don't believe that. Don't get me wrong. I have, like, back in the day, like, I mean, this is years ago in the 90s and stuff. I have been through that before. You know what I mean? But I feel like it's all how you carry yourself. You know what I mean?
Did you have parachute pants too, like I did?
Yeah, I was a little hood. I was a little thug. Yeah. So of course, but now, and this is a statistic. Now, especially with everything going on, police are really scared to pull black people over. They're more nervous. I seen a statistic not too long ago. They said they're more nervous to have an interaction with a black individual. I don't blame them. Like, okay, if you pull over somebody black, wouldn't you be nervous right now if you were a cop? You don't want to do nothing wrong.
Sure.
You either get called racist, you have the mob after you, anything like that. They're scared to like pull us over and stuff now. They probably feel more comfortable pulling over somebody white right now. And that's something I know you can't argue. I know nobody can argue that. Like, if, for example, if a white police officer, if they kill, no matter what that black person is doing, no matter what they are doing, if a white cop kills them, oh, they're done. They're like, the whole city will get burned down. They'll want that cop killed. Everything. He kills another white person, nobody cares. Nobody gives a shit. If a white cop kills a white person, nobody cares.
So let me kind of, because police brutality is, again, another great subject that we'll do on, and I don't want to get too far into different tangents, yes. but it does kind of circle back to that whole white privilege thing, which you say obviously doesn't exist. That at this point, there's almost no white privilege and there's black privilege because cops don't want to pull over black people, so they're just letting them go, letting them do whatever they want to do because they're afraid of being called a racist or losing their job, going to prison, all these other things, right?
Yeah.
The only other thing that I could say that would kind of mirror that, when I was in Afghanistan, there was opportunities for us to protect the base. And one of the things that we would do is if someone runs through the gate, we're allowed to open fire because they could have a potential car bomb or anything else like that. Well, a couple times this had happened. A couple people had opened fire and killed some Afghanistan people before I got there. And they ended up going to Leavenworth. I want to close that, James. Someone's doing some yard work right now, and I had the door open. It was fantastic. But so what, they ended up going to Leavenworth, and they ended up doing what they were told to do, but ended up going to Leavenworth, and what they ended up doing was they ended up scaring anybody else to ever open fire. So there's a story, it wasn't in Kandahar, it was in Kabul, so it was in another city in Afghanistan, but it was there when it was happening. There was a car that was rushing towards the gate, and the guy's like, stop, and there's 3 checkpoints beforehand. They ran through the first 2, and the last guy's the last line of defense before he starts getting onto a base. And he didn't open fire because he was so afraid that he was going to go to prison and never see his family for the rest of his life. Now, luckily, the guy was just a drunk, and there was nothing there, and he didn't blow anybody up. It wasn't anything like that. But it's one of those situations of, you put your soldiers in that particular, and again, this is white privilege. So, but it kind of mirrors that. I think what you're kind of trying to talk about is that it mirrors that same situation where now we're at the point where we're like, I don't know what to do, and as a Marine, you're taught to you've got to do orders to protect your people first, and then when you take that completely out of context and say now you're going to have to rechange everything you just thought, is it right or is it wrong? I'm not arguing for either one or the other. Maybe there's better training to be had, and I could see the value in that too. But you could also say, if that guy truly did have explosives and he ended up killing a Beirut type explosion where 283 Marines and sailors died, it's his fault he didn't shoot. So it's a yin and a yang, right? And so there's kind of that we pair up together a little bit.
I agree.
So we're actually rounding right around that 60-minute mark. So we're gonna come to a close here. I think there's some really good discussions, guys. Continue on with the podcast. Continue on with here. I know both of you guys can jump in and interject and answer questions on live. I'll go ahead and make sure I tag both of you guys on there so that you guys can go ahead and get it on your guys' feed, and you guys can talk about it and have questions back and forth. I know Bree's going to have a ton of questions for you, so I know she is. Bree's a talker, and I absolutely love her. That's why I told her she needs to absolutely be here.
You want to eat me alive, don't you, Bree?
Okay. So Sean Leonard, another friend of mine's, he actually posted a couple questions here, and he said, why do black people get longer jail sentences for the same crimes? And he posted a statistic from gsu.edu and says, why are black people disproportionately killed by police?
They're not. If you want to look up the statistics, they're not disproportionately killed by the police. Like I said, more. Okay, I'll put it like this. And this is some statistics that I know. We only make up for 13% of the country. We do like what 60-something% of the crime, which is ridiculous. And do you know what the statistics are? Let me tell you the statistics. 1% of police officers kill black people. 2% of people, white people, kill black people. 97% of black people kill black people. So do we have a police problem? I don't think that we have a police problem. I think that we have a black on black crime problem. And that's something that nobody ever wants to talk about. That's the big pink elephant in the room. We don't have a police problem. We don't have a police problem at all. And when it goes to money again, that's a class thing. You said why do black people get like longer? For example, if you got the money, you can get out of anything. Look at Jesse Smollett. His last name is hard to say.
Smollett, yep.
Yeah, he did some stuff. He did what he did, and he got away with it. O.J. Simpson. I mean, I can keep on. It depends. It's how much money you have. It's not the color of your skin. I mean, period. That's just my opinion. I don't know. It's about what type of lawyer you have, and it doesn't matter if you black, white, Mexican, whatever. And you shouldn't be doing crime in the first place.
Fair enough. No, and I appreciate you, Sean, for bringing that. But I do ask, go ahead and take a look. He's got that link up there. When you get a chance, take a look, and he's right here. So when you get home or when you get on there, take a look. And you know, these guys are. I know Sean. I coached with at Western Michigan in 2016. Freaking smart individual. I hope you're still coaching, Sean. I think you've probably graduated by now, but extremely smart individual. So I'm very interested to see kind of his think on that.
And another thing that people don't necessarily take into account, it depends on the judge and it depends on where you're at. There's so many variables. It's easy to say, oh, this person got this much more time because he's black. Like, what county was he in? What did he do? I mean, some states are harder on other states. Some jurisdictions are harder on other jurisdictions. People, they try to lump everything together, and there's so many variables to situations. You know, I feel like it's not as simple as people make it to be.
Let's see here. Poor whites, poor blacks, same crime, different sentence. So Brianna says, you know, when you're looking at classism, if you got poor white people and you got poor black people and they commit the same crime, the black person gets a different sentence than the white person. I think maybe you just touched on that a little bit. It could be based on where you're at. But is that based solely, for instance, I do know, and I think I've seen it on your Facebook page, Brianna. There was a particular case where a white man and a black man did the exact same sentence or the exact same crime by the same judge, were sentenced to two completely different, and not like 3 days difference, but like a year and 10 days difference, like big differences and changes. And again, I'm not necessarily saying that racism doesn't exist, because it does. I think we can all agree that racism exists. I think we can all agree that to an extent privilege exists on several different fronts. I think we both touched on it. Some white privilege exists. You don't believe it does? I think to an extent there could be some.
To an extent. I mean, it depends on the variable though.
Sure.
But just to say it's just white privilege, just because you're white you're gonna get this. I don't feel like that. But it's some variables. I mean, it's variables with everything. You know what I mean? It's variables with everything. But as a whole, I say it doesn't exist. But for little situations, it could.
And I think obviously black people have some privileges as well. But I think we all definitely agree that the more money you make, the more privileges you have in this life. I think, I think that's what we all strive for, right? We want to be able to have that same, not necessarily privilege, but freedom, I would call it. I know classism does have its privilege with lawyers and being able to do the things. And I mean, you know, without getting into President Trump or anything, I mean, he's a rich billionaire and can afford lawyers to take care of any tax loops that he wants, right?
Right.
Because he can afford that. I don't know tax law, and I sure as hell can't afford a lawyer to find the loopholes for me that he can, right? And so that's a money thing, I think, more than anything else.
I agree. And I want to go back to like the judges. There probably are racist judges. You know what I mean? There are racist people everywhere. There are racist black people. There are racist white people. There are racist Mexican people. And some people do have power, and some people abuse it. But if those sentences are longer or whatever, then maybe whoever is in charge of it, person needs to look at that situation. That's all I'm saying. You know what I mean? Racism does exist. I'm not saying that racism doesn't exist, but I just don't think as a whole, I mean, it's as bad as people think it is. That's all I'm saying.
So we're gonna end it here because my Mac is at about 3%, so it's gonna die really, really soon. But great conversation, guys. I want to have you guys back. If you guys are watching, I want you guys. I'm gonna be doing this every week, so there's gonna be a different one every single week. Both of you guys, I'm going to tag you on this when I'm done. I want you guys to go ahead and join in the conversation after this is done. The podcast will be up later tonight. Next week, we're going to be talking about coronavirus and whether it is an overblown fear or a serious epidemic. And I think that's going to be, particularly right now, that could be a huge one. Masks are allowed if you want to wear a mask. I'm not saying you can't. I need 2 people. I think I've got one already for overblown fear, but I need someone who's going to go ahead and run that is a serious pandemic, and we need to be in the situation that we're in with lockdowns and these different things. So that's going to be a good one. They're going to have a different dinner, so we'll see what we get. Maybe it'll be lasagna. I'm not really sure, but I want you guys to tune in on that. The podcast will be up later today. Damn it, Bree, I love you. I know, I love it. That's why you got to be here. That's why you got to be here. Now you have no excuse, right? You literally on the computer talking to me right now. I think you're next. I'll read the last things. Okay. She said, read the last thing. I'll make this the very last thing I say. Bree says, but whites don't have laws protecting their education, housing, employment, marriage, etc. I got you, Bree. I got you, girl. Basically, she's arguing and saying, we've had to institute laws to protect minorities and LGBTQ and different things like that. Whereas for white people, the laws don't exist because there's never been.
Let me touch on that. I feel like that's a political thing. And I feel like politicians they use our race as pawns. That's what that is. I feel like I see it a lot. I don't want to get into the whole black. Oh, you know what? I will get into it. I don't care. Like, for example, Black Lives Matter. I'm gonna go there. They say they care about black people. They only care about black people when a white person kills a black person. They don't care about black on black crime. They don't care about black lives. And all the money that gets donated to them, it doesn't go back in the black community. They've gotten almost $1 billion, and it just went right into a campaign fund. And they're doing nothing for black people. I feel like politicians, they use our race as pawns, and it works. Because people feel guilty, they don't want to be called racist, and they want to feel like they helping us, or like I said, we get treated like the handicapped, like part of the race, and I just don't like that. And I feel like that's why people do stuff like that. It's a political tool they use, and it works. It works big time. Because they just prey on people's fears, and they prey on people's emotions, and they prey on the history of our country, and that's real, and that's I will always believe that.
Well, you guys don't have to leave it at that. Hey, I
John,
appreciate
thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So appreciate it, guys. Again, it's going to be on YouTube. It's going to be on the podcast later today. These gentlemen are going to be on here to answer, guys, any questions you have. Keep the comments good. It's all about civil discussion. It's all about coming to commonality and trying to figure out, at least coming to the table and talking to each other and having these discussions. Again, it's not about trying to change each other's mind or try to yell at each other, because nothing ever happens. No one ever changed anybody's mind by being a keyboard warrior. It just doesn't happen, right? But actually having these face-to-face, that's why anybody who wants to be a guest, I ask that they come sit down. And they can come from, if you want to fly from California or from Italy, I don't care. You can come sit down and be a guest, and I would love to have you. But I think the face-to-face conversation is a lost art in today's social media world, and I think it's important to have. And I think it bridges a lot of gaps. So with that, guys, thank you very much for watching. I appreciate it. Tune in, and we'll be in the comments and we'll talk more. And please visit the podcast. Love you guys.